Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Chronologically, we're actually 6 days away from Christmas. And maybe if I package this the right way, I have a Christmas gift. I have one of the most fascinating guests that I've ever had, Edouard Prisse, who's right now talking to us from the Netherlands. Edouard is a macro economist and political thinker, and he wrote a fascinating book. That's why we're here. We're going to talk about that, Sleeping with the Enemy, what the White House still misses on China. So we're going to talk about some heavy stuff, even though it's a week before Christmas and 2 weeks before New Year's. We're going to talk about some very important things. What really fascinated me about this and what we're going to talk about is I remember growing up in the 50s as a kid, and almost every little toy or thing that
You
we got
too.
was always made in China. Was always made in China. And then, of course, I looked where I worked for a long time, and they started switching their um, production to China. So, China is very much a part, and we need to understand and clearly think about our world and talking about all the different facets and aspects of trade and listen, it's fascinating. Hey, it's in the news every day. One aspect
Absolutely. Yes.
in the news, it's global news, and we should understand this. And one of the things I really really like about Edward, and we just met and we're talking, is the fact that he's older than me. And I love that.
Yes.
I love that because
Right.
in my world, I'm always the oldest one now. I'm the patriarch of the family. Um,
Right.
and
Super.
it's just absolutely wonderful that we're both performing at such a high level as we are octogenarians.
Exactly.
And that's great. So, um, I've done my monologue, and Edward, if you want to say a few words,
Uh,
introduction, say a few words, and then we're gonna talk.
Okay. Well, first, Merry Christmas to everybody. And thank you for listening. Lovely. And I'm very happy that Kevin wants to talk to me because he is one of those few, there are many people who really are clever enough to understand complicated situations and then give comment. So I look forward very much to this interview because I think it will be really worth your while to keep listening. And we are talking about the error that was made by Bill Clinton in 2000 of starting free trade with China. And in my book, I explained how stupid, if you look at what he said then, it is to have started free trade. And what he then decided is still going on 25 years later. And the second part of my book is the only president who understands the danger of this trade is Donald Trump. Before him, the four other presidents never understood. Not Obama, not Bush, not Biden. And so he understands already since his first presidency, and he does something about it. And that's how he is, Trump. He does things. But in this case, he does it so quickly, and he has, in my eyes, very bad advisors. Poor guy, poor Trump, because they are not helping him to organize his actions. And therefore they go wrong. And my book says don't do it like that. And I give a method how to do it. That is the essence of the book that you are going to hopefully read and enjoy.
Okay. So, what originally what originally inspired you to explore the dynamics between global economic systems and China's rapid growth?
Um, I was in China in 1990 and fell in love with a lovely, beautiful, extremely clever Chinese woman. We married, and I have an in law family there. And then you visit and talk to the in laws. Her brother, her younger brother, is still a great friend, and everybody in that family, except my wife, was member of the party. And in China, that just means that you belong. It is not a political decision. It is that you are at a quite high level. And I understood how extraordinarily powerful is that party. And I immediately understood that all the predictions on my side in Europe and in America, where I'm often, that democracy would come through in China was absolutely not going to happen. So very quickly, I divorced what I think from what everybody else writes in the newspaper. And I started to think for myself. And when then later in 2000, Bill Clinton gave this big speech in New York and started free trade with erroneous, really very stupid, erroneous arguments, I thought that goes wrong. That will inevitably make China too rich. And I'm sure they'll correct that. And then that didn't happen. And when it starts slowly, year after year, 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, did not be corrected, then I must do something. That's the answer to your question.
Okay. Okay. Was there a particular moment in your career, and you've done some amazing things we didn't even talk about, and maybe later we'll talk about,
Yeah.
that the company you started. We'll get to that. But was there a particular moment in your career when you realized that this book needed to be written?
That was a bit later. I first thought I just need to write, and I wrote an article, which I still think the best article I ever wrote in 2008, and sent it to the New York Times in 2009. It was called The Bleeding of Western Power, which I thought was a nice title. And the New York Times never answered and threw it in the wastepaper basket. So that didn't work. And I had a very right wing friend, too right wing for me, but a nice guy. And he had read what I'd written. And he said, look, the New York Times doesn't take it. I have a friend at FBI, very right wing too. I'll see to it that they take it or put it on their website. And he did, and they did. And so it'd been on the website of FBI, this article, for 3 years, which I'm lucky because I can still prove I wrote that article because the New York Times didn't take it. And so so this failed. It wasn't published. It was on their website, and you can only find it if you seeked it and looked for it. And after that came the moment that you're asking for. I thought, look, this doesn't work. Nobody has read it. I must write a book. And then I started. And I've written 4. And I've published them in self-publishing on Amazon. And I had illusions, being a naive guy in that field, quite naive, that if you put a book on Amazon, people will read it, which they don't. Nobody does. You know that. I didn't know that. So, right. So by now, you are one of those lovely people that say they will make some publicity. This is what I'm trying now. It's taken years for me to get so far. And so the moment that I decided to write was, let us say, a year after the whole failure with the New York Times, my anger about it, the FBI had it but didn't do much, then I decided.
Okay. How did your background in macroeconomics shaped the way you approached the narrative of this book?
It did, but if it had been only just, it wouldn't have been enough. The problem with the trade, the political side, the government side, the business side, there's a huge side of the business community, how it reacts. You have to know business, you have to be legally trained, and those 2 things I am as well. And it is not just because macroeconomic is the 3 macroeconomic, business, legal formation that makes it possible for me to understand the overall thing that makes the whole problem.
Okay. So, Sleeping with the Enemy, it looks how Western decisions contributed to China's rise.
In my eyes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
what can this teach us about how interconnected the global economy truly is? And I think we're all aware of just how interconnected it is, every day when we go to the food market. And
Exactly. It is interconnected right now. And it is, there's absolutely no doubt. And people also have said a lot about that. It is a good thing, global trade, and it has been praised, and it is true. Global trade is good, except when it is in complete disequilibrium. And it is between us and China. But otherwise, trade is very good.
okay. Um, I like this question. I like it. Why do you think nations sometimes misunderstand the long-term consequences of economic decisions? And I mean, I'm just looking back at me as a kid growing up here in New Jersey, and as a kid and seeing everything coming from China. And I mean, I'm just looking back at all these decisions and everything going on, and I just sometimes I just wonder about the thinking processes, why these decisions are made, not only here, but around the world. I mean, it's a global world. And I could listen, I could talk about, I can go off topic and talk about how much we need each other because we're going to have problems. We're going to have food problems, which we're already getting. We can't get chocolate now because it comes from West Africa, and they've got a drought. And blueberries, a lot of blueberries come from I think Peru, and the water that is disappearing from the melting glaciers. I mean, there's so many problems we have as a species, and that's what I look at. I look at that we really are one species, and that's why I call my channel "Conversations with Calvin." We the species, because we are one. And one of these days, hopefully, we're going to wake up and learn that we are all brothers and sisters here, and we have to really work together. But going back to the original question, why do nations misunderstand the
Yeah,
long-term consequences?
that was the first thing of the many things you just said. And I'd like to answer that if I can, because in asking that, you really touch the essence of what is going wrong, I think. And the essence is this: we have not been trained, and governments and our leaders have not in the past been trained into understanding the consequences of the links between different regimes. And the major conference now, consequence for us all right now about these contacts is what is going wrong with China. There is a consequence where it really goes wrong and has gone wrong for 25 years, and our leaders have not been trained to understand. That's why Bill Clinton make these huge errors. That's why not either Obama, nor George W. Bush, nor Biden ever understood what was happening. And the special thing is that Donald Trump, who has not been trained in macroeconomy, he instinctively understands what's wrong, which in my eyes, I think he's a difficult man, but he's a genius because he understands. And then comes, well, let me first revert to your essential question. I think the basis of what is lacking in all the relationships and in the understanding of everybody about those relationships is a lack of training in academic circles about macroeconomy. Because it was only Mr. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, an Englishman, a genius, before Second World War, who understood for the first time how depressions work. Before him, all the big guys, Adam Smith, whoever John Locke, you on them all, never understood. Very famous guy, didn't understand. He did. He has written it and has exposed it. And so for the first time, it became a science how to understand macroeconomy. And it's a difficult science. And if you now look at the universities and just take, and I've done that, I've looked very carefully at the famous Americans, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and all this, how they teach macroeconomy. They don't. They only teach some consequences of the theory existing, but they don't explain the theory. And then I've been looking, so in my eyes, to answer your question, knowing and understanding that theory is something that is lacking in the whole understanding by everybody about what's happening. And then I thought of myself, I had much earlier, I have a not too bad mathematical mind. I stopped that because I thought all the guys studying mathematics were too tedious, and then I wanted to do music, and I was not allowed. I did law, and after that I did business school. But I heard about Keynes, and I wanted to understand, and I read his theory, and it took me a long time. It's a very complicated, high-level, difficult thing, but I got it. But I thought I'm not the only one. It's normal. Apparently, almost nobody understands what he has said. And if you talk with any professor, let us say at MIT, which is an extremely high-level university, and you talk about how they teach it, you realize they don't teach it. And so there is an absence of that understanding, which in my eyes is at the basis of what's going wrong in understanding between nations. That's one. The second thing that is absent, and which is not about macroeconomy, is that if you have a relation, and we have a trade relation with a regime like Chinese, it is a dictatorial regime, and we are democracy. You have to, when you study that relation and want to see what is going to happen, you have to know what dictatorships do. That is completely different from what we do. And the big difference in China, there are three. The first is the government has decided cruelly, because they are cruel and they use their cruelty, and we don't in democracies, to keep the workers in the factories low-level paid. They are completely separated also where they live from the middle class, which is rich or getting rich. The workers stay cruelly, I mean, very rough. They may not even join. And so the production costs stay low. That's the first difference between this dictatorship and us. The second difference between China and us is that they had, when it started in 2000, about 600 million of the 1.3 trillion population were people in the countryside, very poor, well educated, nice school, clever, ready to work, but extremely poor and ready to have a reserve of 600 million that can enter your production process anytime you work is something that we do not have, and they have it. The second difference. And the third difference is, because of the free trade, they got rich with our money, and we pay for all we buy there. And the stuff, you know how huge is the amount of stuff that comes here, but just as huge is the amount of money that goes there. And that has given them a stash of money, and quite big right now. They have assembled 11 trillion, of which they've spent about 8, and they've got 3 left as a reserve. If you can spend so much, and if you have such a huge reserve, you have reserves that neither the US nor Europe has. That's the third difference. So the basis of the difficulties in relation is, one, macroeconomy is not being taught, is not being known. Two, the differences between China and us are not being taken into account. Those are the two main elements.
Okay. You know, it's funny, you talked about Keynes. When I was in college at Rutgers, we had to study economics, and our textbook was Samuelson.
Yeah, good man.
And Samuelson was actually, in my reading, Samuelson was actually an idol of Keynes.
He was. I very much admired Samuelson.
Yeah. And so he presented, and you know, and this is a long time ago, but he presented in the textbook that we used, you know, economics in such a way it was really easy to understand, and it was good. He didn't delve into Keynes. I'm trying to remember. It's a long time ago,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I know that Keynes, part of who he was, talked about demand is more important than supply in
yeah,
figuring things out.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I'm saying it sounds simple, but I'm saying it, but as you just said, it's very, very complicated.
It
But
is. It is
but
quite complicated.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but you made me because I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
You made
Yeah.
me think, and you made me go back and kind of refresh myself on
Well, I'm
some of
very
the,
happy you mentioned Samuelson because I liked him very much too.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a great textbook. I can actually, it was a kind of a brown and white. I can picture
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
in my
Me
basement.
too. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We are
Um,
both octogenarians. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
hey, and we should talk about that sometime. Come back. I mean, by the way, I'm serious. You're an octogenarian beyond productive and amazing. At 6 years older than me, I'm an octogenarian, and I believe I just finished my I just finished. I launched my book, 10 Things I Learned About the
Yeah.
Billionaire,
Yeah. Super.
last
Super.
week. So
Yeah.
I'm more productive
Yeah.
now at 80 than I've ever been before. And there are reasons for that, not economic reasons, or maybe in parenthesis,
Yeah.
maybe
Maybe the
are.
whole thing. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
package. So, all right, back to business. Um, you walk readers through decades of decisions. What patterns did you notice in leaders and institutions, how they assess risk? Because I think I don't know if they ever, some of the people you mentioned, I'm not mentioning, I don't mention names, but some
Okay.
of the people you mentioned, I'm not sure these folks assessed risk in the decisions they were making.
They think they do. Let me give an example of one guy who I rather liked, who thought he assessed the risk. Biden has understood and really assessed the military risk of China. And he has gone out of his way to get Japan, Australia, Indonesia, uh, and many countries on his side in the military confrontation with China. So they try, but when they don't have the background like Biden didn't at all have about trade, they just don't see it. Is that part of an answer?
Yes, yeah,
Before we
yeah,
go on, let me say one more thing. You said I'm 86 and it's so good. Let me tell you, only one part of my whole thing functions. My brain, all the rest is going down.
correct, correct.
Okay.
I can attest to that for sure.
Okay.
There are no magic wands out there, except
Unfortunately, not yet. I think a
not
bit too
yet.
late.
Not yet. We're working on that, and let I
Yeah, but
work.
we're too late, I'm afraid.
By the way, off topic, and
Yeah,
I like to go off topic, and
yeah.
just made me think. I do a lot. I do a lot these days. I use AI, different AI programs to kind of help me along, and it's a huge help. Do you worry about as AI gets bigger and bigger and more inculcated into our way of life that it may not be such a good thing?
I am not competent enough
Okay.
in that field, but I, of course, have an opinion because one cannot avoid it. Up till now, I have a feeling AI will still be guided by people. And when it does too much harm, people can stop it. The danger is, of course, AI getting into hands that are not on the side of humanity, but of their own pocket, and who want that's a big risk. But the risk of being people only looking at their pocket and not about the common good has existed always. Up till now, I rather think AI existing is fascinating more than that it frightens me. Fascinating because it's not quite clear what's going to happen.
Understood. By the way, a lot of folks don't realize that you and I collectively grew up in the 60s, more or less.
Yeah,
And in the 60s, there was this wonderful movie I went to see when I was in college called 2001: A Space Odyssey. And
yeah,
that in the 60s was the first real slap in the face example of AI when Hal, the computer,
yeah, yeah,
wanted to take over the ship. So
yeah,
Hal was fighting with the astronaut, I forgot his name, and they were fighting, and the astronaut's trying to keep control of the ship, and the
yeah,
computer wants to take over. That is AI
yeah.
in the
It's a
60s.
good example. You're quite right. Yeah, I
Yes,
never. Yeah, you're quite right. Yeah,
yeah,
it was a
I
wonderful
am.
movie. Yeah,
Yeah, and what's his name? Arthur Clarke wrote that. He wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I think he kind of dabbled in AI. But in all the discussions going on today about that, nobody makes reference to the fact that, hey, this ain't nothing new. This went on in the
yeah,
60s.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You know,
In that sense, you're quite right. I haven't thought about it like that, but you're quite right. And I loved those movies. That movie.
same
That
here. Same
do
here.
you
I don't
remember
watch
the
it a lot.
music that came with it?
Excuse me?
The music. There was a fantastic music by
Oh,
Richard
sure.
Strauss.
Yes. Oh,
Fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
sure.
not necessarily a fan of Strauss, but that music was,
Yeah,
it kind of just lifted you up,
yeah,
and
exactly,
you,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, and you're in the spaceship and it's heading out and he's
yeah,
drinking and eating and they're playing that music um
exactly. Yeah,
and then you have that
so
obelisk, which is really controversial, that they were trying to investigate that big obelisk that's coming out of the,
oh
what
yeah,
is
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is that? And I guess there are a lot of ways to assess what that was. Some might be maybe putting yourself into an artificial state of being elevated. That's a nice way of,
May I interrupt you?
yes,
Is for this you are giving me pleasure because at my age, wait a minute, I'll tell you why. At my age, of course, either guys go away, they die, and one of my very best male friend ever died, and he's gone 5 years ago. But on the other hand, there are quite many left, and almost all are quite limited in what they can still understand. So talking with you is great fun. It's an exception for me.
wonderful.
I don't want to give a compliment. I just want to tell you I'm happy. It makes fun for me.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah,
Hey, listen, for you and for me, we've been around,
yeah,
and
exactly.
and you and I got into this. I got into this notion of crystallized intelligence, and I like it. And I taught at Rutgers University a few years ago. When I was 74, they asked me to teach. So when
Yeah.
most people 74, they retire, they're drinking prune juice and they're retired. And I first started teaching, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and but it's a mental, it's an attitude, and it's a way of life. But crystallized intelligence is
What do
the
you mean by that? Because that's a new term for me.
yeah,
A
it's
crystallized
it's
intelligence.
been around, but nobody really uses it. But crystallized intelligence is we've lived 8 decades and we've learned, and it's all up here.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
no computer. So nobody, no Gen Z 20-year-old college kid can compare. No matter what, you can have all the AI in the world to have, but nobody can take away what's here and what we lived.
I do agree with you. With you there, you. I think you. I thank you. I quite agree.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So and
But
that's
that
why.
is why that is also one of the reasons I am a bit more optimistic about AI than you suggested.
Okay, because this governs me, and this is who we are, what we've learned, and now it's coming out in the writing I do, and I always say, sometimes when you're publishing a book now, they ask you, did you use AI? And of course I didn't because it's me. AI can never get into this uh,
Uh-huh.
and
Right.
understand this. It's me
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you.
I quite agree. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think is a reason to be optimistic as well. about the future?
Well, I want to be optimistic. I got a couple of grandkids. You have, I think, 5 kids.
I've got 5 kids, and up till now, only 2 grandchildren, and a third coming up.
I have two also. Nothing in this world can match the joys of a grandchild.
Yeah. Yeah, and in my eyes, also the joy of a child
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, of course,
Yeah. Mm,
of course.
yeah.
Nothing. I went to last night. My granddaughter, she's 4. She sang Christmas carols in her school thing. So I went and I watched my granddaughter sing Christmas carols, and it was wonderful. 4 years
Yeah.
old, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
such a kick out of that. I still have a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction when my grandchildren call me grandpa. I don't process that. Uh, I mean, I look in the mirror. I said, I can't be a grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah.
How,
Yeah. Yeah.
how am I a grandpa? But I am. And it's
Well,
funny.
let me give you a prediction because
Sure.
I am 5 years older than you. In those next 5 years, you will begin to accept it because I have just accepted
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well, that's something to look forward to. That's good.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Okay.
good. Okay. Back to business. But
Yeah.
I love going off topic because I'm with a contemporary. Usually I'm interviewing people who are like, a half century younger than me. And this is wonderful. I'm enjoying this because we're contemporaries. Um, your book describes how global choices affect everyday people. We know that. What stories or insights, as you're doing the research for the book, that stood out to you when you're putting this together? Sleeping with the enemy. Did anything particularly stand out? Um,
No, that is,
well,
um,
you talked about
the
Keynes. I mean,
understanding that I try to put in the book has grown on me. Of course, sometimes there's a shock, and I can give you a few of those shocks, but the real process is a step by step being able to fill in everything that creates what has happened, not only economically or politically, but also historically. How has it been possible that this happened like this and not like that? And what is behind it? And there are many, many factors, and I try to put them in a understandable way in the book. Um, for example, just to give you one of those factors, um, I was told many times when I predicted in 2003, 2004, China will get too rich. And I had bankers and serious guys whom I respect who told me, you don't understand finances. Shut up. It will not happen. And we know. And they really did not know. And so you get step by step through these consciousness that suddenly grows on you. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Then how is it then? It's a process. So I can give you a few shocks. One shock, for example, was, and it's a long time ago, in 1989, there was the Chinese Tiananmen Square rise,
yeah,
where the
sure.
army then shot. And then 10 years later, the Berlin Wall fell in 1990. And I then predicted, look, if East Germany joins West Germany, which is rich, and East Germany, ex-communist economy, poor, there's a problem. If you open the borders, which they did, it became one Germany. And if you give them the one currency, which was the West German currency, became the currency of all, then nobody in the East provinces can compete with efficient Germany. A farm in the East, inefficient, with two small tractors, two small land tracts, guys with two left hands instead of right hands, cannot compete with an efficient farm, which in Germany, under competition, have learned to be efficient. So I predicted all those guys are losing their jobs. And I put it in the newspaper. Nobody else ever either predicted it, nor when it happened, recognized it. That was a big shock.
Hmm. Wow.
Uh,
Wow. People sticking their heads in the sand, like an ostrich. Uh, the ostrich is one of my favorite creatures because
Yeah.
the ostrich, when there's a problem, he sticks his head in the sand, and
Exactly.
one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
two things happens. When he sticks his head out, the problem is either there and it went away.
Yeah, yeah,
50-50, and it's a
yeah.
great
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Somebody ought to write a book about the ostrich. I think, it's a nice philosophy. I think. I don't know. What do I know? Um, um, how do you think cultural understanding or misunderstanding shapes economic expectations across nations? So, nations either understand or don't understand, and it's
Yeah.
a cultural thing. And
Well, let me answer that about China. Um, Almost all authors who, since the year 2000, have written articles, and of course, thousands of articles, and in foreign affairs, in Brookings institutions, in many magazines, in many places, in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, almost all the authors, sorry, consider China to be equal to us in how they process things. Almost none just takes into account the huge differences there are. And I just gave them to you before. One is it's a dictatorship who does and manages things completely different from us, which has completely huge economic consequences. And the other thing is they have three circumstances, the 600 million, which are by now reduced to 250 million, but there are still 250 million poor people. So they still have a stash. They have much more money than we have. And the third is, I'm forgetting the third, but
no, that's okay.
wait. Anyway,
That's okay. Um, do you think people underestimate, and this is, I mean, and this is, I live with this every day,
yeah.
in the news when I'm looking at things, the price of eggs goes up and all this stuff, and the little insidious, quiet ways and how this is affecting. But do you think people underestimate how economic shifts influence their lives?
Well, right, they have underestimated for a long time, but by now, almost everybody realizes that it does. Almost, it is in the newspapers. And what you do see by now in the last few years, and especially this year, that people realize there is something wrong with this trade. It is too much, and we get poorer, and our factories are beginning to crumble. Like Ford Motor Company had a trouble with electric cars because the Chinese are more efficient or more cheap. So people begin to realize something is going wrong. And there's a lot of writing about that. What I miss in those lot of writing about that is that I find nowhere up till now people who say this is what should be done, even if they're wrong. There is not even a tendency to try to find a solution. There is a complaint, and everybody describes the problem brilliantly, but just describes the problem, doesn't say what can we do. There's too little constructive thinking, I think.
Okay. I agree. Folks need to do much more thinking instead of making quick decisions. These things are intense. Maybe they need armies of better advisors. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
of course, I pretend to know. I'm quite a shitty guy. I pretend to know what should happen. That's why I
yes,
write
you
this book.
do. Yes, you do. That's why
Okay.
you wrote that. Um,
No.
from a purely economic standpoint, and this is also interesting, from a purely economic standpoint, what can we learn from China's unique growth model? Because it's an amazing growth model.
Well, I don't quite agree that it's partly a model, but only for half. It's a model in as much as that, as when you're a dictatorship, you can do things that make growth faster, which democracies, out of human rights respect, don't do. It is their cruelty. and that is a model, if you will. On the other hand, it is not a Chinese model. It is due to our stupidity of having free trade. That is what we did. It's not what they did. It's not their model. We gave them that almost as a present, which we should never have done. So I don't quite agree to say they have a growth model. The model of their growth is partly Chinese, partly ours.
Okay. Okay. What did your research for Sleeping with the Enemy teach you about long-term sustainability in economic systems? And that's a key thing, long-term sustainability. What did it teach you?
I rather like economy. It's something which I like to look at. And almost always, like in the business world before the year 2000, there was an equilibrium which installed itself naturally when something went wrong. Then the whole world, the business world, political, adapt and things go well again. The processes how this happens are a human process, are cleverness, and are nice. And then you ask me how can I say what will be long-term guarantee? Well, that is, things must be put right or must get right by themselves. Either way, but some things are being done by a government that nobody can put right unless the government itself corrects an error. If a government makes an error and fixes a rule, that is the rule. Nobody can change that unless that government changes things itself. And so for long-term sustainability, when there is a basic government decision error, in order to have a safe future, the errors must be first recognized, which they are not. Our major errors with China are still not being recognized. There's still nobody who writes, we made the error with China. And we did. And if you don't recognize it, it stays there. So my answer to you about long-term success or equilibrium is government has to realize first that they made the error, has to recognize it, because you can realize and shut up about it, but you must say it so that everybody understands, so that the whole business community understands what happened and that you want to correct it. That is not happening. I hope this is a clear answer to your question.
Okay. Yep. I'm understanding.
Mhm.
In the process of writing, we'll talk about that a little bit. How do you balance? I'm a writer, of sorts. How do you balance the rigorous economic analysis and theory here with storytelling that you want this to generate with general readers? It's a balance
Um,
of theory and storytelling.
I am not like one of my friends who died now, a gifted writer. I'm just a writer who tries to put into words what I think. And the answer to you, how do you do that, is I simply do my best. And of course, you learn by your stupid mistakes, because when you start writing, I did anyway, make very stupid mistakes in the way you write something that you want to bring over. So the only thing I can say is I'm not gifted. I just do my best, and I hope that by now it begins to be more or less readable.
Okay,
I don't dare to say anything else.
that's fine.
Mhm.
It's funny. So you're writing this. Did the whole process of writing this change your perspective in any way?
Well, it has helped me because you are forced to put it in a way that the guy who reads it understands it. Then you are forced to put it in another way than it turns in your head. And to put it into words is a different process. And writing has really helped me putting my own thoughts in order and clear. So yes, it has come back to me as a teaching process, learning process.
Um, Okay, moving on. How can countries,
Yeah,
any
by the
country,
way,
yes,
you write much easier than I do. I've read your turtle book, and you have an ease which is fun, which I'm really jealous of. I
it,
don't have that.
it's called Stream. By the way, I never studied English or writing in college. I studied pharmacy. So I studied science and chemistry and pharmacology and physics and mathematics, everything that I hate. Hate. And because
Yeah,
my mother was very overbearing and she insisted that I become a pharmacist.
yeah.
So I
Oh, you
studied
did.
and part of tortoise is how I got through pharmacy school. And it
Yeah, yeah,
wasn't the traditional way. It was done with band-aids and
yeah,
other
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
And other things. So there was no writing, except all those years there was something inside me, and I didn't know what it was.
Well, you have something, you have an ease, which is a talent you either have or not, and
Yeah,
you clearly it comes out.
it comes
Yeah,
out, and it
yeah. Good.
finally one day it came out. It came
Very
out
good.
20 years ago when I watched this movie Casablanca, which I love. Uh,
Yeah.
and after watching Casablanca, I grabbed my head, and I'd seen it a million times. I grabbed my head and I said, "My God, there's a novel in my head."
Yeah.
My poor wife out there said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I have to write a novel. I never wrote before." So it was a spiritual, with me, it was a spiritual thing. The spirit in my life got to me and said, "Go start writing." And that's how it all, began. It was a
Yeah.
spiritual thing, and which is very important
Yeah.
in me. Um, Another nice question. I mentor students at Rutgers, and I'm still very much involved with young people. What advice would you give to young people who want to understand the global economy? Uh,
Oh, yes, I do have an advice there. What I miss and what I would really advise and hope that they do is um, please use your own brain. Don't believe what everybody says. I've met many people, and even my own children sometimes, they follow what is generally said and they think it's true. Please think yourself. You can, but you must do it and you must be skeptical. Please be. That is my
okay.
advice.
In general, it's a similar question, but what would you like readers to take away after finishing your book? Is there anything they should take away?
They should, in whatever way they want, try to convince the White House to do something better in this field. And in the way they influence it, maybe they vote for something, or maybe they write something, or they may stand somewhere yelling with a flag and saying it. But I hope people will say, this must happen. That helps politically. That helps, in fact.
Okay. Um, if you could summarize the entire message of this book in one sentence,
One sentence.
one sentence, what would it be? What would it be?
Well, let me see. Um, we have made an error with China, comma, one sentence. We do not correct that, but we should, comma. And the way to do it is not even being thought about, but I have one in the book.
Fine. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Um, what's the anything next for you? Are you thinking about you have another project coming up or anything?
I've recently written an article which I'm still trying to have published. It is about the absence, general in the Western world, both in America and in Europe, of macroeconomics understanding, and then researching how this is possible to have come about. And that's, I think it's a nice, very specialized on that, just on that subject, but it gives the background. It gives, for example, it gives the one of the explanations that the whole macroeconomic is not being taken seriously is that financially trained politicians, like a minister of finance of a country, they have been trained in finances and they've been running things before they became minister. Every time something goes bad economically, you have to stop spending. And it is true for people, your family, your house, your wife. We don't have the money, let's stop spending. It is true for businesses. You must stop spending when there's less profit. And this is true for many institutions. And John Maynard Keynes says governments, on the contrary, can spend themselves out of recession. It's the opposite. Financial people distrust that because it's the opposite of what they have in their instinct. It's one of the elements, and my article tries to understand how that has influenced the whole macroeconomic scene. It's one of the aspects, but that I'm writing now.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. My last question, which is off topic. Um, you don't have to answer it, but
Yeah.
it's a cute question. I got it from Barbara Walters, a great American journalist. So, Edouard, excluding family or friends,
Yes.
somebody, I think I know the answer, but somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Yeah. Should I name him or her?
Could be anybody. This is a fantasy question.
But he or she should be dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Either living or dead. It doesn't make a difference.
Oh, either living or dead.
Living or dead. Somebody you'd like to spend a day with. Maybe a couple people, whatever.
You are almost forcing me into confessions I don't want to make.
Then don't.
Well, let me give the other half. I told you I had one of my best friends. He was a man. He was 4 years older. He was the first guy in life who saw me more or less as I am, because my father had broken me completely down. And I'd love to speak another half hour with him. And that won't happen. And he had a clear mind. It was a fantastic guy. Let me just give you a detail about him. He became, as a diplomat, he was quite clever. He has been sitting on the Security Council and for Holland, Netherlands, and has twice, when you sit there and it's your turn, you are twice president for a month of the Security Council. And at that time, it was now like 12 years ago or 15 years ago, there was an American guy who sat there for America. He was the American diplomat in the Security Council. And my memory, which is irritating, but he has a name with two O's, Rogoff or Strogoff or something like that. I forget it. Anyway, this guy said to the press one day, look, I have a job here which is difficult because I have to be here the whole time. If something is there, I must be there to react for America. Except when this Dutch guy, Peter van Welsum, is president, because he will ring me when there's something I can go on holiday. He got that compliment.
Great.
And that was a great friend. I'd like to speak to him once more.
That's great. Great answer. Great answer. So we have concluded this amazing interview that expands the cerebral process of learning and understanding and grasping in your notions and your ideas. And yes, the world is filled with change, and you're just giving us such mechanisms of thought, and that's why I do
Right.
this. I don't do politics or religion ever. I've decided that was a choice I made 15 years ago when I started journalism. But to me, this transcends. This is everyday living. It's going to the supermarket and getting a loaf of white
Thank
bread.
you.
Yeah, so this transcends, the notions of politics, and we
Yeah,
live in a global
it does.
world, and it's too bad all the global leaders don't have clear visions of things that we really need each other. In another generation, we're going to lose, a third of the planet's going to be underwater, and we're going to have to house a lot of people. I mean, and food, as I mentioned, we're losing so much food. We're going to have to come up with new food things because our planet is not going to be able to support the stuff we're doing, whether it's climate change or not. I'm not even going down a political thing saying it is or it isn't. We're just losing food, period. You want to come up with a reason for it? So we're going to need all of us together come up with ways to take care of us,
Yeah.
all of us. So, this is a form and a mechanism for understanding and learning to work and live with each other. That's my take. So that's why,
Thank you very much.
yeah, I mean, that's why I did this interview because it expands the mind and helps us to learn. And it's not politics; it's living,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
got to live
sure.
with each other because it's a small planet and getting smaller. So, Edouard, I can't thank you enough for your graciousness and your time.
I want to interrupt you because I'm afraid you're going to close before I can say something.
Say it.
First of all, to you and all the listeners, Merry Christmas. But second, you guy, you are a fantastic guy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I mean it.
I appreciate that. I do. I work hard at it. I'm a nice guy, and I do my meditation every day, and I tell the folks up there I'm a nice guy, and I care. And I'm so glad that we got introduced, that we could spend this time together. So I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. A Merry Christmas to you and a Happy New Year. Don't
Okay.
leave. I'm just going to stop recording and we'll do a 2 minute wrap. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Edward. And so much good luck with sleeping with the enemy. Truly, truly, truly. Thank you. Thank you.